Since the year is nearing its end, I thought that it would be nice if we can talk about the lessons that we've learned in 2024. Since especially since last episode, we've talked about the hard truth that no one has prepared us for, generally in life or in adulthood. So I think it's kind of fitting, or it would go kind of in that same direction if you talk about the hard lessons, or
not necessarily hard.
Not exactly. I was gonna say not necessarily.
It's like
hard,
some realizations that
exactly, yeah, like something you've learned, something that maybe kind of got integrated more into you, that became more of who you are.
Exactly.
Nevertheless, let's just jump directly into it. My first lesson that I've learned this year, which I guess is a classical one, it's kind of related to people pleasing, but at the same time, it's not. So you know how I used to have people pleasing tendencies in the past.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, instead of people pleasing, what happened to me is that, I'm going to be considerate, more like along the lines. At some point I started expecting people to treat me the same way that I treat them. So automatically that made me become someone who tries his best to be considerate, to be a good person, to respect people, to respect their boundaries and all of this. And in return, I was expecting everyone else to treat me that same way.
It's not how it works.
It's not how, exactly. It's definitely not how it works. I guess at some point, like, my people-pleasing tendencies that I was getting rid of just somehow manifested in that direction. And I've come to realize two things, especially this year. The first one is, which is the classical one, that you cannot expect things from people, regardless whether you're expecting them to treat you in a certain way, or whether you're expecting them to be fair toward you, or this and that. Expecting things from people is not something that, it's hard to go into details about this, because you've got there's a lot of unknowns, and there's a lot of, it's a really complex subject technically. So again, I've come to realize that I can't expect things from people. And the second thing is, regardless of how you treat people, you cannot expect them to respect you and, respect your boundaries, just because that's what you do with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes, whether you like to do it or not, whether it's comfortable or not, you have to actually set the boundaries yourself. Even if it means that you're probably going to end up hurting this person. And
you're not responsible, though, to
being in a position that you don't want to be in. Yeah.
Like, it reminds me, I remember your peak moments of being a people pleaser. I remember this guy that you knew like 2 years ago, someone who you didn't want to be friends with, but he was calling you often. You knew him from work, I think. I don't know if you remember that, but he was someone, he also came from Syria, and he would talk to you at work. Every once in a while he would call you and start talking to you. Hey, you want to meet out? And you just do it just for the sake of people pleasing, even though you didn't really want to meet with him. You were not interested in that. And I feel like that stage was your peak in people pleasing. And now, after you had this realization, you're becoming more and more of like a no-sayer for things that you don't really want to do, I guess.
It's not just this, like the people pleasing tendencies that I've had disappeared along the time at some point, because it was a process that I was working on for some time. But even though I'm a no-sayer right now in my life, that's just something that I've come through as recently again, because when I started learning about people pleasing and, setting my boundaries, protecting my own peace, if that's what you want to call it, I was trying to do the same to other people, whether people that are close to me or people that I don't even know anything about, like somebody random on the street that is asking some question, or some random interaction, or some kind of small talk. I would still try to, be that same person to that person, like I'm being considerate. I'm respecting their boundaries. If I'm noticing that, okay, they don't want to talk about this, they don't like me trying to challenge this boundary or this belief, then I would kind of, like put a stop to it or something. But again, it's because I started doing this and I've learned about how to set my boundaries. I was still expecting people to respect my boundaries just because I'm setting them. So in the sense of like, okay, don't ever do this to me. And just expect people to just stop doing it for me,
Yeah.
or doing it to me. But I've realized that even if you say that, sometimes people will still challenge that boundary, and
You can't control their actions and reactions to
you
your.
either have to learn to be fine with that, or you have to find a more assertive way of putting a stop to that,
Which is a difficult way, I guess.
Exactly,
It's like
exactly.
the more difficult approach.
It's, again, because I feel like this is kind of a way how people develop from people pleasing to have this kind of tendency, and it's harder for people to kind of become self-aware of that. Like, I've been like this for a year right now, and it's still kind of just starting to sink in that, hey, for the past year, even though you've been setting your boundaries, but you're not exactly setting your boundaries. You know what I mean?
You notice it here and there, but
exactly. But it's the realization starting to hitting in.
But there are a lot of things that sometimes we don't notice that we are things that we're stuck in, like being people pleasing and stuff. But other people see it. It's like I notice it in you in many different occasions, and sometimes you either deny it or like you don't realize.
That depends, because, for example, like when you're talking about the friend or that guy that I knew, some of the times when I met up with him, it was my people pleasing tendencies, and some other time there was a reason.
Okay.
Whether that reason is because we had that kind of transactional
relationship or
friendship, relationship, situationship, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how you would call it. So there was like a give and take between us. I guess he knew that, and I was certain of that. So sometimes I did it because of people pleasing tendencies, but sometimes at the same time it was like a give and take. Like, okay,
they could go together, I guess.
Exactly,
kinda, because you wanna please him so that this transactional relationship is going forward.
Exactly.
In the same sense.
But at the same time, like
we
I said,
do that at the workplace as well very often. Like you want to get along with your coworkers, that you are there for each other, that this is, it's a healthy environment in general.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I'm someone who is against people pleasing. I hate how I was like a big people pleaser in the past, but I still see some value in people pleasing depending on the environment you're in, like in the workplace and stuff like that. You gotta be a little bit people pleasing, not always saying no. So because nobody's gonna like you.
It's an environment that you're gonna be
exactly
for a long time. So
you gotta people please, even if something you don't really want to do. Maybe sometimes just say yes for the sake of it. Not always. Like as you said, it's like finding the boundary, finding like the balance in it, I guess. Yeah. Something I have learned this year, which is something that I've thought about for a while, but like I think now it is starting to make more sense to me since I'm becoming more and more vulnerable recently, which is that you can't really explain emotions in a logical way. Like we talk so much about emotions. We like to call this anger and sadness and describe them, but I feel like so often, especially men, we start to explain our emotions just for the sake of avoiding feeling that emotions and just talking about it, and I do this way too often. Like instead of expressing the emotion I'm trying to express, I would just talk about it in a more abstract and logical way, what this emotion is and why I felt it. And it's all just avoidance. It's just trying to avoid it. And I notice this mostly because now I show more of these emotions, like sadness, like anger, like more, I express them more honestly, and I realize that you can't really explain to people the feeling that you have, or even explain it to yourself. You can only feel it at the end of the day. Words, no matter how many words you have for them, it's not gonna show the full range of this emotion that you are feeling in the moment,
I still think it's important. It's good to know.
It is important
how emotions work.
Yeah.
What kind of emotions we have,
For sure.
It helps you kind of determine.
It puts a direction, like on the
not just a direction, but it's like kind of helps you determine what emotion you're having, maybe why you're feeling that emotion.
It's important,
and maybe how you can navigate that emotion as well, or the energy that comes from that emotion.
How to deal with it,
whether it's a good or a negative energy. So like when I feel like once I started learning about how emotions generally or in specific situations work, I became more able to navigate my emotions. And I'm not necessarily talking about the negative emotions, because a lot of people take this just about in relation to the negative ones. I'm also connecting
Even
this
the
to the
positive
positive
ones.
emotions. Exactly. So like, okay, I'm happy. Or like,
Why
I'm
am I
feeling
happy?
really this. I'm feeling really joyful. I'm really grateful. There's a lot of agency in me right now. So I try to understand why I have that, how we can have that more often in your life, maybe, or what is the best place to
Yeah.
put that energy in, for example.
I do think that's
You
important,
know?
but sometimes we take it way too far.
Exactly.
Like
I was kind of
to the
building
point
up
that
for
you're not
that.
feeling the
Yeah.
emotion anymore.
I use, not just use, I still
Like,
do that
example,
often,
we
to be
always say
honest.
it like, oh, I'm feeling happy. Then you start thinking about why you're feeling happy, and then you're not happy anymore because of this logical
It's
analysis
just
of it.
this self-awareness of it,
Yeah.
I guess, as well. You know, you've
It's
got the
too much
element of,
self-awareness.
yeah.
We'll talk about this as
If
well.
you've
It's
got
like,
the element of self-awareness that can take you into a huge spiral of trying understanding the mechanism, the why, the how, the this and that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, sometimes a part of me thinks or realizes that if you want to experience an emotion and you're going through this life, if that's what you want to call it, maybe it's more about experiencing the emotions to the extreme, not in an extremistically way, but experiencing and being immersed in the emotion that you're having in the moment fully.
Yeah.
Whether it's the good or the
Doesn't
bad,
matter.
without trying to force an explanation
Exactly.
on it.
That could lead to avoidance. That's
Exactly.
The thing.
Not just, it creates that kind of fake sense of validation.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm validating my own emotions and my own mental state, and that kind of lets the emotion just like kind of, you know, come down and settles in. And once the emotion starts to settles in, I feel like that emotion sticks on longer.
That's true.
You know, it's like we're hanging into that emotion because we
You're
gave
thinking-
a reason.
we're
You
thinking
gave a
about it.
reason to why you have it,
We always say it like
and
when
then you just hang on to it. That it just sticks around.
it's like
instead
anger.
of just like letting go.
It's like anger. Something
Exactly.
makes you angry. Like a car passed you by fast. It was driving fast or whatever, and then you were angry for like 2 minutes. But then you keep thinking about why you got angry, why that person is dumb or whatever you want to call him, and then you get more angry until the whole.
And then
day
you get
passes.
angry that you're angry, and then it's just
Exactly.
like it becomes.
And it's just because you're thinking about your emotion, because you're explaining that emotion, trying to analyze it and why it happened. So it's really this like self-consciousness and thinking about ourselves just have some big downsides sometimes, especially when it comes to emotions which are not related to this self-consciousness in a sense. It's just because we start thinking about me, because we can't control the emotion that we're getting. You know, you can sometimes control what you're thinking about, but the emotion is just gonna rise.
It's just like,
you know, you gotta go through it, which is not always easy, of course. So
definitely, I don't know who talked about that, but in one of the books that I've read recently, to be honest, but I'm reading too many books right now, so my brain is all over the place with the names and the writers and all of this. And they were talking about, you know, like how we hold on into emotions. He was explaining emotions as sort of an energy and so on and so on and so on. And he talked about how we hold on to emotions and how we can notice that in our body language, you know, the tightness, the you know, your body just like kind of rippling into something.
Even some feelings you get in your body, in the stomach, when you get excited or nervous.
He took exactly the same example as you did. You know, when you're driving in a car and then a car passes somebody does something, and usually just an emotion, aka a thought that just passing through your brain, but we end up kind of closing the exit for that, and we just hold into our body and our brain, talking, trying to understand and asking the questions, and you know, thinking how we should act next time and this and that, instead of just like realizing that it's just like an emotion, as a momentarily situation, if that's what you want to call it, that's just gonna go through, and then life is gonna go on.
Maybe you're talking about the book The Untethered Soul, because I've read it in that book.
Could be.
It was a nice example. It really makes you understand what it means to get this emotion in the moment, but how we keep dwelling on it for so long. Yeah. What's another lesson for you?
It's not something that I learned. It's something that I'm still
figuring out.
Not just figuring out, I guess I'm trying to find my place or its place in my life. which is the ego, the shadow side, if that's what you want to call it, because the shadow side is the same as, like, technically the shadow sides that everyone has is made out of our own ego. And I guess sometimes you're get too comfortable with how things are and kind of trusting the process. So, like, I've talked about how trusting the process and how everything comes in due time many, many times so far.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of thinking that, or maybe I got too comfortable with trusting the process, that I'm not putting as much effort as I would like myself to put, if that makes sense. And that got me to think back to when I started changing things in my life and for my own sake as well. And at the start, it was a huge part of it was my ego, was my shadow side, just coming out as like, this is what we want,
Yeah.
We gotta try, we gotta push through it, Well, not the grinding mindset that we mentioned last episode, but more like, like, I'm gonna initiate something, I'm gonna try to build up momentum to do something, and then once I've got that momentum, I'm gonna hold on into it. And even if I fuck up, even if I fail, even if this and this, it's okay, you can just try again. That kind of ego, the ego that pushes you forward in life, and that gets you to where you want to go, or at least gets you on the path that could lead up to where you want to go.
Talking about the higher ego, I guess.
The higher ego that I've mentioned before, exactly. And I feel like at some point in my life, I became a little bit too complacent, maybe, with the fact that, okay, there's a process and there's, things come when they're supposed to come.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can just sit around and expect things to just come to you just because you're trying to hide your ego, or maybe kind of have an ego death completely. So the lesson here would be, maybe it's okay to let the shadow side out. Maybe it's okay.
You gotta let it out.
Maybe it's okay to kind of not just the shadow side. It's okay to let your ego drive you. Sometimes it's needed, or at least I'm realizing that sometimes we need to put our ego in the driver's seat and just give it complete control, just so it can get us going in the direction that we want to, instead of trying to hold the ego back all the time and trying to, let nature take its course, I guess.
I don't remember we talked about that. I don't even think that is possible 100%. Like, even monks who try to reach their pure consciousness and they want to get rid of the ego. First of all, I don't think it's possible to have that all the time. And second of all, I don't know if it's a good thing. I don't know if it's purely a good thing for your own personal
exactly
progress. So I've always been, because many people talk about like, get rid of the ego, let the ego disappear, have this ego death that you're never thinking from your ego. But I think it's kind of bullshit that you can't really completely do that, and it's not even necessarily a good thing. Sure, it's a very, very good thing to have less ego, to tame it, to keep your shadow side, like, to have control
under
over
control,
to not let it out loosely, you know what I mean? But I don't think it's good to completely ignore that and get rid of it.
It's what Jordan Peterson talks about when he says it's better to be a warrior in a farm than being a farmer in a war.
Yeah, kind of.
It's like, you have your sword. Yeah. It's like, you're a knight, you're a fighter, and you've got your sword sheathed beside you. You're not letting it out, but it's next to you. Yeah. When the time comes and when you need it,
you'll be ready.
You're ready. You can take it out, and you know how to use it. And
because also I think the ego arises for a reason. Like, I don't think it has a meaning, like some cosmic meaning or anything, but I think it is there. We have it for some reason, some survival reason, some evolutionary reason. I don't know. There must be something here. Why we have this self-consciousness, why we have all of this, that we need to build this identity. That I think there has to be something behind that. Like, I can't believe it's just some random occurrence.
Now you're going in a direction where I've literally
it's a bit different. Yeah.
It's like,
it doesn't have to be something spiritual, but like,
not necessarily. But thing is, like, there's so many things that we still cannot explain in life. Whether it's the ego, whether it's the consciousness, whether it's how we are so self-aware. And I think when you start mixing all of them in the topic of like, what's the reason behind all of this? I'm one of those people that are,
I don't know,
going like, hey, I've got no fucking
yeah,
clue. I've got no fucking clue.
I don't think anybody
There's
does.
many theories, whether it's the Big Bang theory, the evolution theory, you've got, okay, wait. Now, because I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. When I'm talking about the evolution theory, I'm not talking about the human evolution. I'm talking about some theory that was related to the world evoluting from something, and then human were monkeys, and that kind of,
It's not,
it's not the evolution, because I've had this discussion many times before, and I've mentioned it as well in one of the past episodes, and I've talked about the difference between. Anyways, there's many theories, but I'm one of the people that got to the point like, you never know.
Yeah, we might even never know.
We might even, exactly. We might never know, and you can try to explain it however you want to, but regardless of from what perspective and what way that I am able to look at it currently, I cannot find any explanation or any reasoning or any whys or any hows that could satisfy the way that I look at it. Maybe I don't know if that's the right way to phrase such a complex subject or not, but
it could be a topic for another day. We go in depth about this. It's something interesting to consider.
But the lesson is technically, in really simple, summarized way, is it's okay to let your ego out, and it's okay to let your ego drive you somewhere. Maybe that can lead you to a new path that can get you going in a specific way or in a certain way, instead of always trying to hold it back and be like, okay, no, I can't do this. In a movie, Coach Carter, I don't know if the movie is called Coach Carter or not, but just a quote that came to me. When they're asked what's our biggest fear, and they say shining too brightly, something between those lines, but it's actually because they shine too brightly that they liberate others and allow them to shine also so brightly. And for somebody to be able to say this or do this, I guess the ego is something necessarily, because you're seeing yourself as someone who's like leading people, not someone who's like,
absolutely.
I'm a background
any kind
character.
of leader, you need some ego. You can't. Yeah, it's another topic. It's another topic for another day. But speaking of getting you another direction and finding paths and all of these things, this is kind of related in a way that when you're trying to do something, if you want to do something, everything is possible. Like, you just need to put your mind to it. And many people don't achieve the things that they want because they don't have enough will and belief in the things that they want to reach. We get lazy. We put things on the way. Oh, I can't do it because I'm not strong enough. I'm not this, I'm not that. And it's all just in our head that stops us from keeping moving. Like, sure, there are things you can't achieve because it doesn't abide to the laws of physics and logic that, oh, I'm going to be president of the United States next year. Like, that's a bit not realistic, but many things that you dream of are achievable if you have enough belief in them and the will to work on it every day. And this is something because, like, I would say the past year or past year and a half, there's so many things that I managed to do that I thought were not possible. Like, I was just not believing in them enough, which is like becoming better at editing videos and, this podcast, how it's progressing, that we're becoming more naturally at speaking, and also managing to switch a job that I didn't like to find the one that I actually enjoy doing. So it's so many things that happened in a span of time, like span of 1 year, that made me realize that I just need to put my mind to it. And it's also true for me, even in the context of just working on one video on my channel, where I have a vision of it, how it should look, and then I managed to make it exactly how I want. I'm like, anything is possible. You just gotta keep doing what you're doing. Trust the process.
You also gotta have a bit of conviction, a bit of belief, and
something to push you, not just motivation, but like it's a mixture between motivation, discipline. Like
it's
so
like
many
you have
things.
that image of how things should be in the future, and you're just trying to make that vision a reality.
Exactly, believing it can be reality, not thinking about it as just a dream.
Exactly. Because when you're thinking about it as just a dream, you're putting that kind of
unrealistic, abstract.
You're putting a distance. No, you're putting a distance between you and the image. So when you think about like, okay, by this time next year, for example, I want to be able to play guitar. And when you're saying, or when you're looking at it as a dream, then it's something that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And something that's way too far away from you because it's something that's not realistic.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at it as, okay, by this time next year, I'll be able to play guitar, or I would want to be able to play a guitar or play like 10 songs, let's say, or something like this, then it's not really unrealistic anymore. But there's a little bit of,
challenge.
This is me right now, and this is who I want to be by this time next year.
And you see it just as a challenge,
you've got a comparison as well.
Yeah,
it's not just a challenge, but you've got like, this is where I am, and this is where I'm going. It's like you're sitting at the bottom of the mountain and you're looking at the tip of the mountain and you're just like, okay, this is where I'm going to go. And you're sitting at the bottom of the mountain and you're just like dreaming of climbing that mountain. When you're not just like, okay, this is where I am, this is where I am, and this is where I want to go. And this, and just sitting there, just like, I wish I was able to climb this mountain. Like, no, that's when you start putting the distance between.
Yeah. But it's not, I have a good example for this, but mostly that, as I said, that you can achieve many things if you put the will for it, but there are still limits. So the example, I think I read it somewhere, it was Thomas Edison that he said he's going to create, the bulb, the light, and he will light all of New York, and nobody believed him. And I don't know the time span, but it was such a short time that he managed to do that, and everyone was in shock that he was able to do that. But notice that he didn't say, I would light the United States or the whole world. He said it's New York. It's something that is maybe very hard to do. Maybe it's a dream. It's not imaginable, but it's still in the context of the limits of physics and logic that you can't light up the whole world. It's a bit too much, But lighting a city, maybe there is some truth to it. I think in his mind, he knew that it was possible, and he worked on it every day until it became a reality. And now, because of him, we had so many.
We've got lights.
Exactly. Like, it's all because of this dream that was based on some logic and some realism that was achieved because of will, because of motivation, because of discipline, all of these things. So I see it as a really good example.
We've talked about this before, setting unrealistic goals and how can, not just unrealistic, but maybe even unachievable goals.
Yeah.
And how that could practically, probably, possibly even backfire on you.
Yeah.
But something related to that is that something that I'm trying to. It's not a lesson. It's something that I'm trying to implement in my life, though. Is that when you want to do something, when you have a goal, if you want, or there's something that you want to achieve, try to romanticize the grind.
Yeah.
Romanticize studying for 10 more minutes, reading the next page of the book that you're reading. And what could it possibly describe to you? If you're in the gym, hey, romanticize the next prep, the next extra push they're going to do. 1 kilograms extra that you're putting on I don't know what kind of exercise that you're doing. Romanticize how the grind is going to be and make it more joyful and sustainable in the longer run. Because you can have the image. I'm getting a little bit off topic here, but that's something that I've heard not long ago, and when I started thinking about it and going a little bit deeper into it, the concept of it kind of gave me such relief that the grind doesn't have to be hard, but you can just romanticize it. You can still enjoy the grind.
Put some passion into it.
Exactly. And that could get you to get anywhere that's, of course, within the realm of realism, if that's what you want to call it. Nevertheless, moving on for the next point.
I would say the next one is something we talked about, we both share. You want to start?
Which is, yeah, sure. Which is, you cannot find the perfect balance to do everything in your
Yep.
life. And I've told you this already, but there was a time not long ago that I was trying to find the balance between probably like 5 different things, perfectly balanced. So I'm doing all of them. I'm putting it, equal energy in all of them, and, moving forward in all of these things equally and being satisfied with the progress. That lasted for like one day. I'm not gonna lie to you, that lasted for like a day, perhaps a day and a half. But then automatically what happened, at least my own experience with it, was that some things were, tipping more, like, okay, I'm putting more energy into this and less energy into this, and I have more time for this, I have less time for this. And it wasn't perfectly balanced, but things were just like going left and right, right and left, until I realized that even before that, most of the days in the evening, I would be sitting with myself and I'm like, fuck, we could have done so much more.
Feeling the guilt.
The guilt of, like, oh, I should have trained for like half an hour more. I should have read for like an hour more. I should have studied for like half an hour more. Maybe I should have, cooked healthier food. Used more fresh ingredients, whatever it is, But realistically speaking, maybe not even just realistically, logically even speaking as well, if you wanted to do more in this area, then the other area would get neglected. You cannot have all of them perfectly balanced and perfectly.
You can try your best, and I think it's healthy to try your best. Like,
it is good.
But like, we've talked about moderation before. I made videos about like balance and moderation. I still think it's something to strive for too. But don't expect that you will have the perfect balance between everything, because one area or two areas of life are going to take more attention, just depending on your priorities in the moment and your energy levels and how your goals are shifting and changing your vision for the future, or what something new randomly happens in your life, because I used to try to always find the balance between having fun and working, and it works for a while. Sometimes I'm like becoming more cold and just working. Another time I'm just hanging with my friends and I don't want to work, and it doesn't work. And then I start a new job and I get in a relationship, and now that takes even more time and I have less time to work, and I feel guilty about it. Maybe I could have worked more, find more balance. There's no way to find that balance. Something is going to take more attention, and then at some point you're going to start focusing on something else, maybe finance, and then your relationships are going to take a little hit and you become more distant. And it's just the way it is. It really requires acceptance every day, to accept, okay, today I did little work, but I also did this, like find some acceptance in this imbalance.
I think that the healthy way of dealing with this, at least what works for me, is to know that I've pushed myself to my limits. So if I'm working out, and I know that it's going to take a little bit more time, but some part of me is like, no, you could have done an exercise more, then I would do that exercise more. So at least I know when I'm done with my exercise or with my workout, I know, like, okay, I've done what I wanted to do. Sure, I could have pushed myself 5% more, but even if I didn't push myself that 5% more, I'm still fine, because I've already went above or beyond my limits. And then when I get back home and I'm studying, for example, and I finish, I don't know, I studied for like, let's say half an hour or something, and I want to move on to the next thing. If I notice that, okay, now a part of me still want to put more energy in here, or maybe I should put more energy in here, then I would do, a little bit more. I don't know, like, let's say 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, and then I would move on to the next thing. This way I know that, okay, like, I've really pushed myself to my limits, and I've put the energy that's needed in this section, and now I can move on to the next thing while knowing that I didn't leave anything behind.
You also gave your 100% for that day.
Exactly.
You can put it not just for the gym, just like anything, that you gave your 100% for today. Today you had less energy. Today your mind was somewhere else. I think it's also important to notice if you are not doing something because you're slacking or procrastinating, or because you need to give attention to this other thing. Like, sometimes it's good to give attention for having fun, to do something with your friends, to release something, like just realizing, okay, I'm not slacking here. I'm just focusing on something else at the moment, but I'm going to go back to that. And it's not going to repeat every day. I'll do it tomorrow. It's just knowing the difference, I guess. to realize
Knowing-
if you're procrastinating and having resistance, or if you're just focusing on something else right now.
it's I think that's where priority lists come in handy.
But even priorities
guess-
sometimes shift and change. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you know?
But that's why it's good to have
It
a
matters.
priority of like, okay, like today, my main thing to do, for example, is to record the podcast.
Exactly.
You know, tomorrow I don't have to record, so my focus can go
Something
somewhere
else.
completely else. So for today, you know, I'm allowing myself to neglect the other things a little tiny bit, so I
Just
can
being
focus
conscious
more
about
on
it,
the
you
podcast.
know?
Exactly.
Self-awareness goes a long way.
And
So it's
then
okay.
you know, priority changes depending on the day, depending on what you've got to do and your to-do lists. But still, I still like the idea of always trying to go a little bit beyond, not necessarily just a little bit, to just go beyond your capacity of the day. If your capacity of the day is, let's say, 80% of your usual energy, then it's
Just
always
give a little
good to
more.
go.
Just give a little more.
Exactly, give it a little bit more. And then when you're in bed at night, at least, you know, you've got something to soothe yourself. You know, we're like, okay, I've done more. I've pushed myself beyond my limits for this day,
I
and
think
I've
I do
tried
this.
my best.
I think I do this subconsciously.
You know?
Now, when you talk about this, I do this sometimes subconsciously, just
I
to
do as
make
well.
the day
I do
better.
as well.
Okay, maybe here
Like,
I didn't give everything,
sometimes-
but in this other area I gave a little bit more. You know,
Yeah,
it's like,
I know the feeling, because like for me sometimes when I'm done studying, I would say, for example, after I'm studying something or after the gym, and a part of me feels guilty because I could have, or usually I would do more.
yeah,
The other part of me that I know is like, okay, you've gone beyond your limits for today, kind of consults that part. I don't
exactly.
know. You
It's
know,
a back and forth conversation.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
just knowing that you
we
tried
all
your
have
best
this.
every day
Yeah.
is something, I guess, that kind of helps with the balance. Even if the balance is not there,
Mhm.
like you're just trying your best in all kind of different aspects, and you're pushing yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
That should be a good.
I guess that's it for this episode. I'm pretty sure there are other lessons that we've learned along the way this year, but I feel like, at least for me, these are the ones that hit me the most this year, and I feel like they started to sink in more, and I started to realize them more. And yeah, I'm also just excited for next year to see. Maybe next week we can talk about goals, and you know,
Could be, yeah.
we've done an episode before about goals.
Exactly.
Last year, maybe we
Just
can
like-
do something else.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one.